They were trained for war zones, now they're patrolling American streets. Armored vehicles, soldiers in full combat gear, federal orders overriding local control. What triggered the deployment of U.S. federal troops inside American cities, and what does it mean for democracy? It began quietly, as most tremors do. A federal order here, a military convoy spotted there. Cities known for protests and unrest began seeing unfamiliar faces in uniform, faces not of local law enforcement, but of federal troops. At first, officials framed it as crowd control, restoring order, they said, a response to violence, looting, or threats to infrastructure. But soon, the lines blurred. Streets once filled with peaceful demonstrations echoed with the thud of military boots. Helicopters roared overhead. Civilians were detained by men in camouflage, often with no visible badges or identification. The question spread like wildfire. What is going on? To understand this moment, you have to trace it back to a growing tension in American society. A country deeply polarized, protests erupting over policing, inequality, elections, and immigration. Local law enforcement overwhelmed or in some cases accused of standing down. Into that chaos stepped the federal government, invoking powers under the Insurrection Act or through executive authority. These deployments weren't always announced in press briefings. Some came quietly, using specialized units like the U.S. Marshals, the HS tactical teams, or even elements of the National Guard under federal control. But this wasn't the first time. In 1957, President Eisenhower sent troops to Little Rock, Arkansas, to enforce school desegregation. In 1992, federal troops entered Los Angeles to stop riots after the Rodney King verdict. The precedent exists, but each time, it sparked national debate. What makes today different is scale and perception. In some cities, residents described what felt like an occupation. Military vehicles parked near community centers, surveillance drones hovering over protests, curfews enforced with overwhelming force. The visuals were stark, like scenes pulled from a foreign conflict, not a domestic street. Supporters argue it's necessary. They point to rising crime, domestic extremism, and crumbling local command. When cities burn, they say, someone has to restore control. But critics see something else: the quiet creep of authoritarianism, the use of military power to suppress dissent, the normalization of force over dialogue, one where the presence of soldiers becomes as common as squad cars, one where fear, not freedom, decides who controls the streets. Because history shows us something chilling: democracies don't fall overnight. They erode, moment by moment, under the weight of power unchecked. So when federal troops march into American cities, the real story isn't just about what's happening now, it's about what might come next.